Hello.
Hello.
Let's see, we have Alec from the board. I'm looking to see if we have anyone else joining us. And a lot of staff, so do we want to go ahead? I show 3:30, but we'd like to get started.
I think we could go ahead and start, Sue.
Sounds great.
Well, for today's meeting, we're going to have a presentation by staff from project managers Mike Sock and Carla Schumacher. They're going to talk about our water main replacement program, or we like to call it WMR for short. As all of us know, the distribution system in the Des Moines area is continuing to age, and it's very important that we continue to replace those water mains that are either undersized or are having a lot of water main breaks at the appropriate rate to reinvest back into the system. And so Mike and Carla are going to kind of go through that process and how we are reinvesting back into the system. So with that, Mike, I will kick it off to you. Mike, we don't hear or see you yet.
Yep, I'm going to share my screen and give this a shot. How does that look?
Great.
I don't see it yet. Carla, do you see it?
I don't see it yet either. I see faces that are coming up right now.
I'll try it again.
Worked fine before.
Yeah, worked fine during practice.
Mike, that's what always happens, so don't worry about it.
There you go.
Good?
Yes.
All right. Second time, third time is the charm, I guess. Today, Carla and I are going to be teaming up to discuss water main replacement at Des Moines Waterworks, like Kyle mentioned. First part of the presentation is going to provide just some general background about the 2017 analysis that HDR did. And then we'll talk about the amount and types of replacement projects that our team teams up on, as well as the amount of spending associated with those projects. We'll follow that up with some background information about the team itself, who the members are and how we interact with each other. And then lastly, we'll wrap up with kind of a look at our current workload, some future goals, and then also potential future roadblocks that we could run into with water main replacement. So this first slide is information taken from that 2017 analysis of water main replacement that HDR completed. And HDR estimated that our current water pipeline infrastructure was worth about $1.2 million at that time of the analysis. That $1.2 billion is made up of roughly 1,400 miles of water pipeline. And on the right of the slide, that 1,400 miles is kind of broken up into what HDR referred to as a cohort. And a cohort is simply just a grouping or a subset of water main with similar characteristics, such as material, vintage, pressure, diameter. And just to point out a few of those cohorts, cohort A, that is cast iron that's been installed between 1948 and 1966. And you can see, we've got 78 active miles of that type of water main, and its average useful life was determined to be around 70 years. So, that's an indicator that cohort A water mains need to be replaced sooner rather than later, compared to something like cohort D. It's cast iron that was installed prior to the earlier water main we talked about, installed before 1926. We have way many more miles of it in the system, which is a good thing because its average useful life is close to 250 years. So I thought that was interesting. Want to point that out. Just because something's older doesn't necessarily mean it's the worst of the worst. And that's what HR is really trying to identify as the worst of the worst. Where can we focus the money on? And a part of their analysis, they also looked at average break rates and determined around 20 breaks per 100 miles of pipe annually is sort of a national average. So that was the target, and kind of made our goal is we want to cost effectively sustain that desired service level of 20 breaks per 100 miles of pipe per year. That's the primary goal with our water main replacement program. But to do that, we really need to focus on two things. One of them is we need to establish some sort of investment level. How are we gonna do that? How much money is it gonna take? And then secondly, where are we gonna focus that money to make sure we get the greatest return on investment for our ratepayers? This next slide gets right into where we're going to spend the money. It's talking about water main replacement break factors. In general, pipes generally deteriorate as they age. Some age slower, some age faster. Two big factors that play into water main breaks is the material and vintage. So that top right graph is showing that. It's showing cast iron installed in that mid-century range, that 1948 to 1966, has an extremely high break rate compared to some of the other cohorts. Similar situation for the cast iron that was installed from 1926 to 1947. It typically has a higher break rate. So that's one of the things we like to use and focus our water main replacement in those areas. There's also another graph to the bottom that shows water main material size, and the analysis that HDR did found that typically the smaller water mains have that higher break rate as well. So we tend to focus on the smaller diameter water main and installation year around that mid-century post-war area. There are other factors that go into break rates, but they just have a weaker correlation, so we tend not to put too much emphasis on those. But some other correlation factors would be the soil characteristic. Is it highly corrosive? Is there potential for frost heave? Time of the year has a large influence on breaks. We see a lot of breaks during the really cold winter months, and then also later in the summer when we have high water demand. So kind of 2 times of the year, we're really increasing the amount of break rates. And then lastly, water temperature, which is sort of tied to time of the year. Those really cold months, it seems like those cold water temperatures result in more breaks. So now that we've kind of talked about where we're going to focus that funding on, we need to figure out an investment strategy. HDR looked at 6 different scenarios, and they're all outlined in that table 1, 2. There's different strategies involved. Scenario A looks at basically sort of not a do nothing approach, but basically an approach where we don't increase funding. We stick with the same amount of funding year after year, and the results of that is an increased break rate, and just it's not a sustainable system. It was very clear from the analysis that we really need to be increasing funding year over year in order to maintain our goal of 20 breaks per 100 miles of pipe. So scenarios B through B3 look at a couple different ways to increase funding over the years. Ultimately, though, this scenario C is what was chosen and is our path forward. We really want to maintain that break rate of 20 breaks per 100 miles annually. And what that looks like is essentially starting in 2018, funding starting at 7.3 million, and then each year it needs to increase 3.75% in order just to maintain that 20 break rate.
Mike, I think Sue's got a question. Sue?
Yeah.
I do. I'm so sorry. I tried to raise my hand before you went to this page.
Oh, I can go back, no problem.
Would you mind? I just, you know, we're not engineers. And I just have a question. I mean, I see these red lines in both charts. So tell me, what is that red? I mean, that seems so alarming to me and so out of whack with the others. What is that saying to you? I just want to see if I'm interpreting it the same, the same way that you are.
Yep.
Good question.
The top graph there is, each line is representing a material type and then also an installation year. So that top red line in the top graph, that is representing cast iron pipe installed between the dates of 1926 and 1947. And then if you look at the graph, the vertical axis is the annual break rate per 100 miles. So the older that pipe gets, the higher, break rates we can anticipate out of it.
Well, but it's really the years that I was zeroing in on. I mean, 26 to 47, it's not all that bad. I mean, it's bad.
Yeah, it's definitely better. So
But
Some of the
older-
best stuff we've got, the older stuff is like, yeah, it's amazing versus
Yep.
that year 1948 to 1966. Yeah,
lot
it's
of it-
amazing how we have to remind people that the oldest stuff in our system is really awesome until it starts breaking, as Jenny would probably say. And we've had that. Once that starts breaking, then we can have problems. But yes,
yeah, absolutely. If you look at the cast iron prior to 1926, that purple line, that pretty much even flat line, that's approaching 100 years old, and just
there's hope for aging for some things.
doesn't have the break history as the mid-century
Yeah.
cast iron does. And it's just really heavy walled water main, and the materials used back then were of a certain quality that lends to lower water main breaks for sure.
And I think, Mike, you hit it on the head there of saying that the older pipe, the manufacturing process was not as precise. And so it was very thick and material costs weren't very expensive. And so because of the manufacturing process was not precise, the pipe wall was much thicker. And then as there were shortages in metals in the process of spinning the cast iron, they started to thin up the water mains. And so that's why you're seeing the break rate in that red line so high, is because the cast iron mains were manufactured much thinner.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, the numbers are small, but as I was looking at that, I thought, am I reading that right? That on some of the blue, that was 26 to 47, it's half of what the breakage rate is on those that were newer. So thank you.
So this next slide it combines a couple of things that we talked about previously. It looks at that projected investment level tied with some historical spending. So the graph to the right, the blue line shows total water main replacement spending, and that includes, Des Moines, Polk County, Windsor Heights, Pleasant Hill. That's all of our water main replacement. That is actual dollars spent. The black line separates the Des Moines only spending. So where you have the black and the blue dots close to each other, that indicates a time where a lot of that money was focused in Des Moines. It was not spread out into Polk County, Windsor Heights, Pleasant Hill. The areas where that gap is bigger was a time where more dollars were being distributed elsewhere. So that's why there's some discrepancy over the years. just different areas of focus that were being worked on. Also graphed is in orange is that investment level that we previously talked about and is sort of our goal going forward, or at least was the investment strategy picked back in 2017 when the analysis was performed. So that shows that initial 7 million being spent in 2018 and then increasing it 3.75% over time. So if you look back at 2018, we were really close to hitting that mark. We were above it in 2019, below it in 2020, and then back above it in 2021. So we've done a fairly good job of maintaining that spending. I will note that I don't believe those numbers were adjusted for inflation when this was prepared. So we may be actually under that investment projection. Also shown on the graph is, we anticipate this asset transfer to be coming to us in the next 1 to 2 years with regionalization. That $50 million amount, how are we going to spend that? 40 of that 50 million we're looking at directing at Des Moines specific water main replacement over the next 5 to 10 years. And so if we split that 40 million up over, let's say 10 years, we're looking at an additional $4 million a year. So instead of in 2024, we're spending 9 million, we're going to be potentially spending 13 million. So this graph is really just to illustrate that there is, with this increase in funding, there's going to be this gap, and we need to plan and prepare for being able to spend that money and spend it on water main replacement in Des Moines. Next, Carla is going to talk about some of the water main replacement project types, give some project examples with photos, and then sort of talk about how we select streets for replacement.
Thanks, Mike. So it's nice to see you again. It was fun working with you and with all of your help on the Park Avenue project. That was one of my first big projects, and the importance of communicating with the public on that one has carried through in these projects that I'll be mentioning here today too. So it's important, the communication that we do with our customers and with others is going to come through hopefully in what I kind of present a little bit right now. So it's
And
nice seeing you
Carla,
again.
Thank you. If I could just add some context to that for Alec, because he wasn't here. It was a kind of high profile neighborhoods opposed to this work, and communication was key because so many people use Park Avenue kind of as a cut through, if you will. And Carla just did a phenomenal job in the communication with the vendor and the contractors and the neighbors. So back at you, Carla. I was glad to see that you're going to be on the call today.
Well, just it shows that when we work with board members who are in areas that are difficult areas, we can help the communication channels, and we can really overcome some hurdles that get buy-in then from everyone to handle how do we have to deal with things. So yeah, so thank you.
Well, and Alec is so connected in the Drake area and many others that you'll get that support from him.
Yeah, look forward to working with you on those things, Alex. So I don't want to spend a lot of time on looking at this page because I have some photos, but I do want to point out a few things here as far as types of projects. And so we have conflict reviews that come through as far as when we're working with other entities, such as, say, the city of Des Moines. They're doing projects, their consultant or their city engineer is going to send us projects to review to see, do we have a conflict with water main or feeder main within those projects? Some of those reviews result in actual projects having to be done. And other times it's just safety measures that we get inserted into those projects, such that, special shoring and special conditions to protect our pipe against the construction work is entered into the document so that those contractors bidding on the job understand that it's more than just a simple project. It's going to be a little bit bigger. And that's important for us to do in protecting our assets so that we don't have to spend more money because of some disaster that happens. Des Moines Waterworks initiated projects are those where we get to spend our money on actual projects that we know are needed within our system, and that we do a benefit that when we can get those projects done, we're excited because we know that our peers and in distribution are not going to have to be spending as much operational dollars in work if we can be achieving some of those things. So we're always excited about our own projects. City of Des Moines initiated projects. We saw, and I've lived through the last 3 years of high federal funding that resulted in so many projects that just took our attention, it refocused our attention in a different way where it needed to be to work with our partners, with the city and others. But we saw the impacts of what that does for staffing levels and how turnover impacts us, things like that. DOT initiated projects, those are always a challenge. And I've got a couple of examples of those that I'll tell you more about that. Polk County initiated projects are also out there. And then our core feeder main where we have to protect that. So let's go to the slides of the photos and I'll share a little bit more. What you're seeing here, Sue, this project on 43rd Street with this beautiful brick home here. This is 43rd Street. It's a dead end. It's from Greenwood and it's south of Grand. And it's a dead end street. It's a very narrow street and we're replacing water main in the street, as you can see. So this was a challenge because people still have to get in and out of their homes every single day. We've got a house on this street that is totally being remodeled. I mean, major remodel. So we've got contractors who have to get in and out. We've got garbage trucks. The only way the garbage truck can get in is they have to back up. And the contractors worked with those garbage truck guys to back them up and work through that process. We have worked really, really, really closely on customer communications on this one. We have an advocate in the neighborhood. There's a gal who has all the emails and she is willing. We ran into her when we were out doing sidewalk in the fall last year. And she has been doing updates when we need those last minute communications that are, hey, heads up, this is going to happen. And it was unexpected, something I couldn't just drop a letter on. That has been huge. We also have a great contractor on this who has been taking care of our customers and they feel it and they know it because even though it's a difficult project, we have one person on this project who lives here that has high anxiety of noises and things like that. We've worked through things. So this is just showing that just about anything's possible because this is a very narrow street. We're making it all work. So that's an example on the left-hand side of the page. On the right-hand side is an example. So I should say that on the left-hand side, that is a Des Moines Waterworks initiated project that is spending our budget dollars to get something done that needed to be done. This was a 3-inch line here that's upsized now to an 8-inch. On the right-hand side is an example of working under a City of Des Moines project. And this one is massive storm sewer project. It's in the Beaverdale area at 48th and Franklin. It's in an intersection. We have a feeder main, our 20-inch feeder main is right there. So sometimes these things that look like simple alterations, there's a lot more to it. We have to do coordination with water production, with Nathan's group, even to know when we can do shutdowns and tie-ins to make things happen. So that's an example of coordination with city and getting our stuff into their design. Okay, next slide. On this one, on the upper two pictures, this is Southwest 12th Street. This is right near Lincoln High School. And this is an example of a project where we went, we actually had the customers that are living on the street, there's 3 of them, that came to a board meeting and requested that their private 1-inch main be converted into a public main. And that was accepted. It became a project. And so this is what we just have completed just in June here now. Got these folks converted from their 1-inch line to an 8-inch water main. And the enthusiasm that they experienced once they got their water services transferred was amazing. I was getting enthusiastic faces and emojis and texts from them. And it's because they could now do 2 things at once. They could both run their washing machine with clothes in it and take a shower. They'd not been able to do that for 30 years. They didn't have to now organize to when a neighbor could irrigate something, he was normally doing it at 2 o'clock at night. They don't have to do that coordination anymore. This was also an example of our first lead service lines within one of our water main projects that we had to coordinate. And it went really well with using Torgerson on the private side going into the homes and having the contractor out in their normal mode of going up to the stop box. So this has been a very successful project for hitting some of those things. Part of all of our projects, as you can see on the right-hand side, this project by Lincoln High School, it has restoration too. We have street restoration and we put the water main in the right of way. And so we have to, restore the grass in those areas too. Down in the bottom left-hand corner, you see Water Street. Water Street was our own initiated project. It was a project that was highly needed because we had so many breaks on Water Street and they did result in some damage claims of a significant amount. And so we now have, because of that damage claim, we were very careful and very intentional in how we staged and did things within this project, and it came off really well. We also did really good communication with the parties that were on this street that are a combination of residential and business. And we also did coordination meetings where I actually attended meetings with the city to plan marathons and stuff because that was impacting the area. So this is a good example of showing when we're in downtown area, we're going to have to do paving replacement and coordination with traffic control as far as events and just keeping traffic flowing. On the right-hand side, bottom right-hand side, this is residential water main replacement. That is our project. This was a 2022 project that we're just wrapping up restoration now. This was a directionally drilled where we're not open cutting, we're not exposing everything. And you can see that we had hills on this area. We did some unique things on this one for a successful project too. We are struggling on this one with getting restoration completed, but we're going to get there very soon. Next slide. Then we have examples of, on the far left-hand side here is an example of our Hickman project. And this is a DOT project where they're doing the Hickman interchange at I-35, 80 and Hickman. It's right by Living History Farms. The area that we're working is right below the 2 hotels and the machine shed. So this area that we're showing where the excavator is exposing is by the on-ramp to I-35. And we have, we're dealing with some elevation differences here. This was for exploratory digging, just for us to be able to do the design for the feeder main that we're working on right now that will be coming to the board soon. Within this project, in the top middle photo, you see our PCCP, our concrete feeder main that we had exposed as part of this exploratory digging on another section of this project. And what we found was a surprise, which happens often, but we have conduit from a fiber company that had been routed right alongside of us. They should never be running alongside of us. So we're working with Zayo on that aspect of things. That's another story. On the far right-hand side is an example of a city development joint project at Southeast 15th. And that was at Martin Luther King Jr. Parkway and Southeast 15th. And what you see is a shot looking south. We had in this one, we replaced about 300 or so feet of 48-inch feeder main. And we had to deal with railroad permits and some challenges being on a hillside and things here. And as part of that project in the bottom middle photo, we're showing utilities. Utility locates are critical because we have to know where they are so we make sure we miss them. And that was especially critical in this because we were doing casing and we had to be spot on. So we took advantage of, they were laying new utility here and we got out and got shots as parts to make it possible for our construction. Okay, next photos. This is showing another shot for that Des Moines industrial project at the top left-hand corner. That's showing the 48-inch feeder main that we installed. And it shows the new building behind it. That's just another photo in the bottom. It looks like I repeated photos. In this middle photo, it shows how on the south side of the railroad tracks, people were actually getting into this capsule that was here and actually leading the way. They were actually digging out to be able to install this pipe. So it's kind of fascinating. So those are just a couple more shots as far as that work on the south side of that same project at Southeast 15th. Go ahead, we're done with that. So that kind of gives you just a flavor, at least, as far as some of the types of projects that we work on, and hopefully that visual helps. Then we're looking at how do we select which streets that we're going to do when we are doing our own projects using our budgeted dollars. And so we are evolving this process, I would say. And what we do is we get input from water distribution. We actually meet monthly between engineering and distribution to talk about water main on a monthly basis. But we also are having quarterly meetings where we have Kyle as the COO, we have distribution representatives and engineering representatives that meet to discuss and finalize street selection. And it's based on both input from water distribution, but also this long range plan, the HDR analysis from 2017 that has ranked things as far as what are the worst streets that we need to replace. And so this process is evolving and improving as we go. I think that's probably enough said about that, but we're working on really honing in on how we spend our dollars wisely.
Sue, did you have a question?
I do. Lindsay, thank you for answering the question when Carla was saying that this contractor was so exceptional to work with. Lindsay, I know you have brought a lot of best practices to this board and suggestions and ideas how we do things differently. My thought flashed ahead to our evaluation criteria, and I thought, what is it worth to have a contractor like Corel that is doing this kind of phenomenal, outreach and customer relationship stuff? I just want to throw it out there and say, as far as evaluation criteria, would there be something that we could ever put when we're looking at vendors that say our past experience, or not just references, but references / past experience? Because how do you put a value on that? They already know what they're being paid, but come on. Listen, for it to have made that much of a difference, I just want to throw it out there. And it reminds me of how Lindsay continues to, make some recommendations. So just had to throw that in.
But one thing to add to that, Sue, is it's not only good relations with our customers, but it's time savings for us in the office. And I can't stress that enough. To work with, and I've had it on 2 projects now, Mackinac and Corel, where they're good contractors, they know their stuff. And the time that I have to spend on those projects versus some of the others is minimized. And it means that we can be productive and working on other things to really hit what we need to do to get our marks hit. So yes, thank you for recognizing that. And yes.
Yeah, I would just offer, Sue, with these public bidding laws, in our chapter 26 that we have to follow on public improvements, there's not as much flexibility because you have to take the low bidder. But with the non-public improvements that we talked about, or if we're just replacing in-kind things, there might be some more flexibility where we can utilize qualification based, and then we could, essentially look at some of those other criteria like customer communications and, things like that. But as far as how we're dealing with water main at this point with being public, we have the Iowa code we have to follow.
But it doesn't have to be low bid. Low bid is one consideration, but our attorneys have told us that it doesn't always have to be low bid if there are other considerations. And I'm not an attorney. I can't tell you what's in there, but I don't want our hands to be strapped as a utility when it's taking additional staff time. So it might be worth a conversation for us to have at a future meeting to say, how do we stay within the code, but also look at some of these other elements that are saving us time. Graham, you've had a lot of experience in this area. I mean, you've heard us talk about this before. Anything that you would mention?
No, I think these are well thought out plans. We've got good experience working with the community. I would say as an aside, Sue, I think that the resident that Carla's working with over on 43rd Street is Martha Christ, who I think you know. In that project, I walked by that quite a bit, Carla, and I was there the other day and it was a little muddy because of the rain, but they are doing a super job over there.
Good. Well, let me know if it's not that way when you're walking, obviously. So please, yeah. We should be
Graham?
wrapped up in another couple weeks over there.
Graham, thanks for saying that. Next time I see Martha, I will be sure and mention it. Thank you.
I didn't
when that
realize,
came up on our agenda, I reached out to Martha because I know she lives over there, and Jeff and Spooners live over there, and a couple of other people that you might know. And she was on top of it. She had already contacted with Carla, like they said, back in the spring, and she's been just on top of it all along.
Martha's amazing. And
All right.
just a note too, as far as we are doing things to improve our processes to make sure that we are being clear with contractors. So it doesn't matter who we have on a job, that we are improving our own ways of doing things and recognizing what works. And that's an important part of things. We are evolving and ebbing and flowing to meet the requirements, with always knowing that customer care is a key part of what we're doing, because that's why we're here. And getting the most bang for the buck of our, is important. And that's what we're really striving to do. So I'd just add that.
Absolutely. Next, I'm going to quickly touch on the project timelines for water main replacement, kind of what it takes, what the timeline looks like. Typically for the Des Moines Waterworks initiated projects, the first step after we've selected the streets, which Carla touched on, is we're looking to get in the field, collect that survey data, get out there with the GPS and surveying equipment and collecting all of the existing site information. And from that survey information, we can prepare our base map on the computer in our computer drafting program to start preparing the plans. So that would be the next stage, is doing the preliminary and final design, the engineer working with our drafters and that team to prepare the plans on paper that the contractor is essentially going to use to bid on the project. Once we have that completed, we get into the permitting stage, eventually bidding, and then follow that up with award and then construction. Once we get into construction, that's when our engineering techs really heavily get involved. They're sort of the eyes and the ears out in the field for the project. They're doing construction observation, so they're on site watching the contractor do their work. They're doing contract administration, that they're keeping track of quantities, how much work is being done. Unfortunately, in some cases, they have to help the contractor a little bit with some educational items. In the not so distant past, we've ran into some contractors that just do not have the experience level, and we kind of have to lean on our engineering techs to help those contractors along in order to have a successful project. Unlike Corel, who they can show up on a site, they have a strong history of water main replacement, and they don't need that guidance. We do have some contractors that do need some assistance, unfortunately, and we'll touch on that a little bit later as well. The last item is restoration, which is a huge component. It's really the one thing that the resident sees. They care about what's underground, but when it comes to the end of the project, they're looking at the final restoration. Is there grass growing? Is their driveway put back? Is the street put back correctly? So that ends up being a large component of the project sometimes, especially if we're working with a contractor who just doesn't have a lot of experience, or sometimes you run into some bad weather and it's really hard to get that seating established.
Hey,
But
Mike,
from-
One thing I'd
Okay.
add to that is that we are working closer with the city of Des Moines on our projects, such that when the residents let us know that there's weird bumps and things in the road that we can't totally fix, that it's because our water main hasn't done anything to the pavement, we're letting the city know and coordinating closely with them, and they are starting to come in behind us with some asphalt repaving and some of those things. And we let the residents know. So we're doing a full cycle communication so that residents' voices are being heard through our projects too, to elevate and take care of some. And we have been having success with that some of the conditions that they're dealing with are improved. You know, after we get out of there and the city is then coming in behind us, and we're getting better at that coordination too, to make that happen.
Absolutely. So from start to finish, we're sort of looking at around, 6 months for that design process, 6 months or more for construction. So typically around a year for a lot of our Des Moines Waterworks led projects that we're doing here in-house. Next, I'm going to touch a little bit on who is a part of our team, or kind of some of the roles and responsibilities of each group. Really breaks down to kind of 5 different roles. The engineering technician or inspector, as some people might refer to them, they're really involved with data collection. They're going out in the field collecting survey data for us to do the design, and for the engineering design technician and drafters to be able to prepare their design. So they're involved, initially with the project as well as during construction. So they see at the beginning, a little bit during the middle and the end, because they are, like I said earlier, the eyes and the ears of the projects. They're out in the field doing the construction inspection and administration of the contract. And right now we have 6 members on that team with, I would say, quite a range of experience. We have a couple who just have a ton of experience and you could throw any project at them. And we have some brand new employees to this position that they do need some additional training, education to be as proficient as, some of our top engineering technicians. We also have our engineering design technician drafters. So these are the employees who are taking all that field data that our technicians collect in the field, and they're putting in the computer and working with the engineer to actually prepare the plans that the contractor is going to use to bid on. And right now we have 2 main employees who are doing that. We have a third who has some capabilities and some time devoted to that, but mostly it's split between just 2 drafters here for our internal work. And I really want to highlight that it's really an iterative process between the whole team. We're going back and forth throughout the design process. This is not a simple one step, goes from the engineering technician to the drafter to the project manager. It's not like that at all. It's continuous back and forth and takes many iterations, and lots of development goes into getting to the final product. So we have 4 staff engineers and project managers on the team, and we are really the project communication and coordinators, sort of what Carla hit on earlier. We are really there to make sure the project goes to plan. We do other things as well. We establish the project goal, scope, schedule, things like that. And then another big duty we have is we are sealing these plans with our engineering license. So we have, quite a bit at stake when we are signing off on these plans. We want to do a good job because we're putting our name right on the front and signing our names below it. So, and then 2 other positions we have here are the engineering services administration assistant. Caitlin is new to this position, and she is going to really be helpful in the construction phase and the contract administration phase. So after we've awarded a project to a contractor, she really helps get those contract documents put together, and so the contractor can get started right away. Shirley Howard, she has a similar role. She's our engineering office assistant. She gets quite a few customer calls, so that is one thing she really helps out with, is if there is a concern on a project, sometimes those calls get directed from customer service to her or directly to her. And a lot of times she can answer questions without even talking to us. And if she does have a question, she'll reach out to us. But she also helps assemble and prepare the contract documents as well. And next, I'm going to talk about some of our methods for developing these projects. For the Des Moines Waterworks led projects that we pick, we kind of have three methods. You know, it used to be everything was done in-house. It was strictly done by Des Moines Waterworks. That's the first kind of paragraph I have outlined here. This is where, you know, a project is surveyed, designed, managed, administered by the water main replacement team from start to finish. It requires a high level of involvement from everyone. A good thing is it does get the inspector involved from the beginning of the project, so they can kind of see the project develop from start to finish, since they're going to be our eyes and ears in the field. But, you know, we do have some limitations with that. We currently really have 2 drafters. So that is one area that we do have some staff limitation. More recently, we've developed these next 2 methods, and they come with different costs and different staff involvement. But this first one or middle one here is it's led by Des Moines Waterworks still, but it includes a consultant survey. So instead of using our water main replacement team for that surveying, you know, we use our indefinite scope agreement and we hire a consultant like McClure or Snyder to collect that information for us. Then we take that raw data and prepare the plans for the water main replacement. Costs associated with that is typically around 5% of the total water main construction. So there's a give and take to that. It's going to cost us some more money, but if we don't have staff available, it is an option. And then that next bullet or next paragraph is sort of a next level. You know, if we're really struggling with getting projects out the door, or we have a high amount of work we're trying to complete, we do have indefinite scope agreements with HNTB and Snyder for them to essentially lead a project, although it's heavily managed by Des Moines Waterworks still. I want to highlight that the project is still managed and it's administered by the water main replacement team, specifically the project engineer. They're working directly with the consultant every step of the way to make sure we get exactly what we want and incorporate it into that project. Now, along with that strategy, there comes a higher cost, and typically that cost is around 10 to 15% of the water main construction cost. But as far as staff involvement, it was really the engineer that's being involved with that, not as much the drafters. Once we get into the construction phase, the inspectors will be involved. They still do all the construction observation and contract administration. So we don't use the consultant for that construction aspect. We just use them for the survey and some of the design aspect. And next, Carla is going to talk about some of the current workload and also the future of water main replacement here at Des Moines Waterworks.
Thanks, Mike. So we just wanted to give just a quick summary as far so you get a feel for where our current design projects are at and our construction projects as far as, which type of projects are they. So we have 3 core feeder main projects right now. We have in design. In design, we have a Polk County project, Windsor Heights project. That Windsor Heights is 73rd Street, which is a major street over there. And then 23 Des Moines distribution projects that include 4 of our contracts, the 2023 with this philosophy of that we're working in 4 quadrants within the city of Des Moines. We're trying to align with the city of Des Moines, the way they kind of have things structured there. We're starting this process of evolving that way. So we're getting those under design and hope to get those out to bid, later this year. So we're looking at spending the money that's been budgeted. And so that's in our design projects. Construction projects, we have a core feeder main project, 3 Polk County projects, Windsor Heights project on 68th, and then 13 Des Moines distribution projects. So the 2023 water main replacement contract includes that 43rd Street and Southwest 12th that I had mentioned. That's also going to include Southwest 9th Street, which will also get done this year over by the zoo for a stretch over there. So we're busy, to say the least. We are busy and we keep trying to find ways to be more productive in what we're doing. So the future of water main replacement. This was kind of fun for Mike and I to go through this and talk about this and think about it, because it matters, you know, as far as that goes. So our short-term goals: improve processes and procedures. The continuous staff training and development is going to be critical. Obtain and maintain proper tools and software, and develop strong partnerships with our own water main replacement team and with outside entities like the City of Des Moines, Polk County, DOT, and all of those. And then in the more long-term goals, we're looking at how are we going to get to spending the dollars that are budgeted for water main replacement, not only where we're at right now, but as we look to the future influx of dollars that will come, you know, that we're expecting from regionalization. And then staff retention is going to be really key to the successes of all of this. I just have to say that I'm thrilled with the team that we've got right now. The hires that we've done recently are just stellar. And there is so much hope and excitement for what we can do. We know there's a lot to be done, but we're at a good starting place now. And so just want to put those kudos out there that, you know, thank you to management for some of these hires. And we've got a good team that we can build on. And we're working across departments to really strengthen those relationships too. So our challenges and roadblocks: limited staff in some areas, staff experience, limited contractor availability and skill set. As Mike had mentioned earlier, sometimes our engineering techs are literally having to train the contractors. We've had multiple examples of that within the last couple of years. In fact, to the extent that on one of our projects, we had an excavating contractor who got into water main replacement, and we had to provide the list of tools that are needed to put together water main replacement. We did it. We got through some of those hurdles, and that contractor has become a good contractor, but it was with our effort in helping them to get over some of the hurdles. That happens more often than you would think, but there's a reality in turnover of staff. It is hard for people to hire people to do this manual labor stuff that is very important to do. And so we're seeing that. And then there can be two contractor bond limitations. What size projects are we going to do? We've been doing the $1.5 million projects because that kind of fits some bonding capacities, you know, that work for some of the contractors. It also, that size projects allows them to fit it in with other projects. We'll have to look at that as we go forward as to understanding that better. Anything that we can understand and learn and grow with so that we can accommodate and ebb and flow with it is going to be really important. And then prioritization of projects. You know, when we talk about conflict reviews and things that we have to do, we need to somehow be able to manage the emergency stuff that comes in that can't wait with all the things that have to be done too, but get set to the side sometimes because we've got these other things that we have to do also. We're ebbing and flowing with that too and trying to figure out how we can do that better. But we know if a project's in construction, that's a priority. There's certain things that cannot be put off. You have to deal with things that happen. And so we're working through that, and we really are hopeful for the future, and look forward to working with everyone to continue meeting the challenges that are coming our way. I think that's all I've got.
That's a lot. My gosh, thank you to all of you for that presentation. Graham and Alec, any questions that you have for this, for the staff on this very detailed presentation we had?
I don't have anything. I think it's well thought out.
Yeah, same. Just happy to learn and hear more. So thank you for sharing.
I'm assuming that this has gone to all of the committee members. I think it's really helpful information. And so maybe to just include it in the board packet if, well, or they should have received this. I think everyone did. But certainly your presentation would be helpful. So thank you.
We'll make
Mike?
sure to get that sent out if it hasn't already.
Mike and Carla, thank you very much. And let's see, do we have any other comments to be made?
I do have, you want me to move to the second item on that?
Yes.
I'll be very brief. A couple of comments. As we know, last month was a very warm month, especially during Ragbri. It's been dry as well. Good news to share, we have not seen a very high peak day demand. In fact, some of our demands during Ragbri was about 80 million gallons per day. In retrospect, looking back to last year, we had a peak day of 93.5 million gallons per day. And so although this has been a dry year, we've not seen the peak days that we have seen as early as last year, where we were in the 93.5 million gallons per day. But the good news is water sales are continuing to be high for the year. We are on pace to break the record of last year. We set the record for the most water sales or customer demand for a single year. We are on pace to break that again this year. So from a financial standpoint, that's good, but also not having these peak days that is straining the system is also very positive. So demand is continuing to be high. Lastly, tomorrow the Regional Technical Committee is meeting. We meet monthly on that. We've been having presentations from many of the communities sharing their distribution system and how that interacts with the rest of the system. So we're all learning about each other's distribution systems. West Des Moines Waterworks and Des Moines Waterworks also at each of those meetings share projects that have to do with source treatment and transmission. So we're updating the team with that. They've been very positive meetings, but again, we'll have another one tomorrow. So those are my two updates.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Very informative hour here, and we'll make sure that we remind the board to review those slides for all of the work that you did. So thank you, everyone. Unless there's nothing else, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay. All right, everyone have a nice evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.